Hello everybody, my name is Necroxis, and today we're going to be reviewing the audio drama that Blizzard just put out called 1,000 Years of War, the story of Alleria and Turalyon. Full disclosure, I don't know if I have to say this, but they didn't say that I couldn't say this, but I got this early, so I could put this video out, the second that the audio drama dropped, which if you guys were watching when I was talking about when Blizzard flew me and some other people out to talk to them, one of the things we asked them for was some of this stuff early so we could create these videos in advance to basically put them out the second that these launch to everybody else so we can basically get some more traffic. So it's pretty cool that they're listening to what we asked for. So let's get right into reviewing the audio drama. I'm going to start with some general thoughts and then go down to some specifics. So just in general, I think the overarching main point I want to make was this was kind of necessary to make Turalyon and Alleria seem kind of like fully fleshed out characters. I know, obviously these were characters that existed before World of Warcraft. They were in Warcraft 2. Their story goes back before Warcraft 1 in the canon. But it's been, 15 plus years since we've actually seen them in a game, so there's only so far you can go with saying, oh, look at all these cool things these characters did in the past, and now they're back. In fact, I even made a video a while back, a year plus ago, talking about if they did bring back Turalyon and Alleria, is it too late, and would people actually even care? And I kind of still stand by that point in general, but I feel like they're making them a lot more fleshed out and three-dimensional with the audio drama like this. So I just want to say my criticism of those two characters is more, they've kind of been hyped for so long that it doesn't really matter what they do, they kind of can't deliver on the hype. But what they are giving us is pretty great. Because before this audio drama, their appearance in WoW specifically was kind of just a poor man's version of Wrath of the Lich King. It's really easy to draw the comparisons. Turalyon was Tyrion 2.0. He really wasn't as even interesting, in my opinion. Alleria was being Darian Mograine 2.0. The Army of the Light was being the Argent Crusade 2.0. And of course the Void, and people using it, like Alleria and Locust Walker, being the Death Knights 2.0. They're differentiating it a bit now, but before this, which is why this was necessary, that's kind of how I saw them. So I'm really glad that we got this better look into these characters. We get to see more of the relationship dynamic between Turalyon and Alleria. We always knew from the past canon that Turalyon was kind of the softer one than Alleria in that relationship. But it's good to see that reinforced again in this, so that we know those of us who are long-term fans know that they're keeping them consistent to what we've been told forever since they've existed. So that was good. I think this was really necessary, and in general I like this a lot. And Blizzard, in their typical fashion of teasing a lot of stuff, they tease more stuff with Locust Walker, the Ethereal, who uses Void Magic, and him saying again, like he does in 7.3, that he's looking for students to train in the powers of the Void without driving them crazy, perhaps suggesting some kind of exclusively Void-using class in the next expansion. I know, Shadow Priest, obviously. Shadow, in this case, has been reinterpreted with Shadow Priest now to meaning Void, which is pretty cool. I mean, my other 110 besides my Warlock is a Shadow Priest, and they're really fun. But I could see them definitely using Locust Walker and maybe Alleria herself, although, we could have some conversations about how them constantly saying Alleria is not going to fall to madness, perhaps suggesting she is, but Locust Walker at the very least, I think they're very much suggesting some kind of exclusively Void-using class, which would be great because every single new class we've gotten since launch has been a melee class. With the exception of, the Monk that can heal, the one spec that can heal, but everything since then, Death Knight, Monk, and Demon Hunter, have all been melee classes, and we finally need some kind of ranged class, whether or not that's a caster, or whether or not that's like a hunter-ish, or ranged physical using class, remains to be seen. Although I do think regardless of what they do, the next class introduced needs to be a ranged class. to kind of even it out a little bit. So there's that. We're also teased with N'Zoth once again, although he's not listed by name. He's listed as the one who slumbers beneath the waves, and we see this at the very end when Alleria is having all of her crazy visions in the void. The one who slumbers. I was looking at the I was looking up the script so I could see exactly what they called him. Yeah, the one who slumbers beneath Azeroth's waves. The vision says she saw herself killing him or it and taking its place, and leading a throng of horrors to consume every nation. Because a big theme of the Void is they show you basically all potential futures for yourself, but they even show you essentially lies about what you could become to essentially devolve you into madness more easily and let you be taken control of. So this is one of the possible futures that she can see, and it's pretty clear. Next expansion has to be N'Zoth. At the very least, he has to be part of it, and I'm hoping that Azshara plays a major role as well, instead of just some arbitrary raid boss, because she deserves to be more than just the Gul'dan of Legion. I mean, Gul'dan's my favorite character, but in Legion he was just the behind-the-scenes villain and the final raid boss of the first tier. Not talking about Warlords, where I think he was done very well, and I do like his appearances in Legion. I think Azshara just shouldn't be like the final boss of the first raid tier of the next expansion that we only see once or twice. I think Azshara is a charismatic, almost alluring villain who kind of is good at like tricking you and convincing you into believing that her plan is the right plan, and I really want to see a lot of that. I think she's even way more better than that than Arthas was, and we saw that in Wrath of the Lich King. So I hope we have that kind of level of Azshara throughout the expansion when she shows up. So that was another thing that I liked a lot in this audio drama. We also see an interesting clarification of the Twisting Nether and how it works as like a separate dimension that kind of rests against the side of the main dimension. But in the sense that the clarification is more that before this dimension that rested against it was kind of its own. It was its own thing. It like had its own terrain. It had its own land. It was a place you could travel between two. Yes, but there were some places that it was not like a specific location in the sense of like I'm going to go to the Twisting Nether planet. Like there wasn't like a Twisting Nether planet. It was just the Twisting Nether. And what we see here that Alleria and Turalyon end up in like a Twisting Nether version of Outland right after it exploded. Which is really interesting and opens up a lot of can of worms in a good way. Well, I guess, if you want to take it that way, if you like this idea. But it opens up a can of worms where we could be going back to regular Azeroth. I mean, we are, but in a Twisting Nether, like, Shadow Realm version. I guess that's a better way to put it. It's like a Shadow Realm version of Azeroth. Rather than just being like this other dimension that kind of just existed in space that had a couple of planets in it, or a couple of land masses, not necessarily planets. But now we kind of see that there's also like a Shadow Realm version of Outland once it explodes. I'm going to assume that happens once the planet reaches a state where the Twisting Nether can invade it, which obviously it does, like, or invade, or like the planet kind of like bleeds through both universes into the Twisting Nether, which obviously happens with Outland. But yeah, it's really interesting. We've known always that it's a plane of existence between the light and the void, but it's kind of interesting to see this Shadow Realm, for lack of a better term, of this version of Outland, where Alleria and Turalyon seem to recognize like landmarks, but they like can't see anybody else except for the Eridar who was tracking them. So it's fascinating. I want to wonder if they're going to like expand on that concept more in the future, because it really reminded me of old school quests in WoW, like in Vanilla or like Wrath of the Lich King, where you go into the Emerald Dream. But the Emerald Dream is just like the same area, just tinted green, because they didn't want to like remake a whole new environment for the Emerald Dream. And the Emerald Dream definitely wasn't that. It was like the, the perfect blueprint of Azeroth, so it would have looked really different, like it looks in the raid. But before Legion, it kind of just was like, oh, it's the green tinted version, and that's kind of what this reminded me of. It's like, oh, it's the purple tinted version, it's the shadow tinted version. So I'm wondering if they're going to expand upon that idea, or if this was just a storytelling thematic device used to explain how Alleria and Turalyon were the only two who were still on Outland when it exploded, but weren't with like Khadgar and Danath and all them, because they do dive through a portal to get to this Twisting Nether version. So now I guess we can get to more specifics that I did like. I really didn't have any negatives to this, to be honest. I do like that Z-Ra. Z-Ra is interesting. I've had like wild swings about Z-Ra. I hate the Chosen One prophecy storyline, but then Blizzard going back on that and killing her, I was like, okay, that's interesting. I don't like that Illidan did it, and I don't like the way in which Illidan did it, and I didn't like what he said when he did it, as we can see from all the dislikes and the reaction that I had when I did it. But I liked that her vision was flawed, and that's kind of like a theme in this audio drama. Locust Walker repeatedly talks about how, and I actually liked this, and I think it's bringing me, it's getting me closer back to being okay with them slightly changing how the light works, because I brought that up in the Illidan thing too. I brought up as a negative how they're kind of like homogenizing how the light works. But in this sense, they kind of like are not doing that again, but they're more tackling it from a view of the light and the Naru and the Void and the Old Gods and the Void Lords, they're both right and they're both wrong at the same time. I think that's an interesting concept. The light, I forget how exactly he describes it. I wish I could find the exact quote, because they explained it pretty perfectly. And I wish I could find it really quickly. Two bright lights. I think them describing Z-Ra describing Turalyon. I keep wanting to saying Aurelian and Turalyon, Alleria and Turalyon as two bright lights is pretty cool. Locust Walker. I can't find it in the script, but he basically says that essentially the light sees. Oh God, I wish I could find it really quick, and it's really bothering me that I can't. I do like that. This sidetrack because I'm looking for this quote that that Alleria finds the shadow or the void realm basically because her and Turalyon go to Argus to investigate the Emerald Star, which turns out to be the world soul of Argus. And I like how they tied all of that together. I think it's really interesting because we then see Magni in 7.3 talking about the world soul, so we know that it's reaching out to more than just Magni, which is pretty cool. I'm like almost there. I'm looking for it. I just want to find the quote because they did it. They said it so perfectly that I really liked how they described it. This is all off the cuff, of course. One second. Oh well, I can't find it. I can't find it in the giant script that I was sent. It was essentially he essentially said something to the effect of Locust Walker said something to the effect of the light sees what it wants to see, but sees everything but ignores what it doesn't want to see, while the void sees everything, but really can't filter through truth and reality and lies. And I think that's an interesting interpretation of it. Yeah, here it is. Oh, I found it. The light is blind. It cannot see the whole of destiny because it alone is not responsible for it. The shadow is just as blind. It saw your fate intertwining with its own, and it rejoiced. But it, too, sees only a fragment of destiny. but that fragment is unlike anything you've known before. And then she begins seeing, like, visions. So it's interesting that they're having this dynamic, which really kind of was what the dynamic was the whole time. Light and void were two sides of the same coin that kind of compete and fight with each other, and I like that they're interpreting this in this way with Alleria, who... Alleria kind of seems like the child of light and shadow. We keep saying, like, oh, it was Illidan, and maybe it was Eretor, the child of Turalyon and Alleria. But it kind of seems like maybe it's Alleria, based on this. I know Blizzard basically came out and said it was Illidan. We kind of changed it, but it was Illidan. But everything they keep showing to since that introduction of that concept has been like, I don't know, it could have been this guy, it could have been this guy, it could have been Anduin, he's a priest, he could do light and shadow, but I think this audio drama paints a pretty compelling picture for it being Alleria. So yeah, that was a really long tangential point that I found interesting. I always like the themes of, like, the meta themes, like the overarching, like, themes of, like, good and evil, in the sense of when they're kind of manipulated in ways that one thing's not always good, one thing's not always evil. I know this may contradict what I said about the light in the Illidan reaction, but the light still comes across as good, but it has, like, an asterisk with it. And the void still comes across as evil, but it also has an asterisk with it. I think those asterisks are what are interesting. And speaking about other things that I found interesting, I really liked Xe'Ra in this scenario, because the Illidan cinematic, when she kind of is, like, imposing over him, basically about to, like, for lack of a better term, light rape him and, like, make him pure, it kind of presented Xe'Ra as, like, she's just 100% evil. But even in this audio drama, when Alleria, at the end, when Alleria saves Turalyon from the Eredar assassin and gets the two of them back to the Zenithar, and Xe'Ra shows up like, what the fuck, Alleria? You're, like, all void now, and I told you, I even warned you, don't be void, because you're going to be in trouble. I like how even when Alleria was explaining it, and she even kind of, like, opens up her mind to Xe'Ra to let Xe'Ra see what happened, there's a quote where Xe'Ra, like, hesitates. And I think that was needed. It was a tiny little tiny one sentence moment, but it was needed, because Xe'Ra acted really, really different to everything other we've ever seen of the Naru or the Light or anything kind of that scenario. And she just kind of seemed like super duper evil in that moment in the cinematic, which in a cinematic sense was really cool, and it was compelling. And to see, like, the shot of her looming and Illidan, like, right here, it was very interesting. And Taron Gregory did a great job at that. But I'm glad that they had this one little moment to be like, even Xe'Ra, the Light Mother, even she hesitated for a moment. Which leads me to believe maybe there are some other Naru who might not necessarily be against the idea of good Void users teaming up with them to stop the Void. Because Locust Walker does actively help us stop other Void-using creatures in 7.3. He helps us navigate through all the ethereals and helps us stop them. I mean, he's basically kind of using us to do so, because he wants the staff that one guy has in the dungeon, and he wants to get to Lura so Alleria can drain it and become more Void herself. So he's doing it from a selfish perspective, but he is helping us stop other Void creatures, which is, I think that's the way they're going to go about it if they do this idea of good Void people helping us stopping the Void, much like how Warlocks are good Fel users helping stop the Burning Legion, or how Illidan and Demon Hunter. I mean, look, for all the Demon Hunter stuff, Warlocks were like the OG ones who were like, we're evil, but we're gonna help you, because, fuck, the Burning Legion wants to kill all of us, us included. And Demon Hunters were like the second version of that, but they kind of got the reputation of being that. And as a Warlock main, I feel like I should point out, bitches, we were the first, and you were the second, so get your shit together. Don't be taking our reputation. But it was great. Where is I'm at the very end. I wanted to state the Xe'Ra. Here it is. Lithraxian, who's a major character of the audio drama that I hadn't talked about yet as well, who I really liked. It's interesting to see his perspective. It's another thing, Lithraxian, I believe I said it way back during the beta. I was like, I need more information about this Light Demon Hunter. And while we don't get a lot of it, we do get some things from his perspective. Him talking about when he was a Nathrezim of the Legion versus a Nathrezim, if he even is still that as a race in the Army of the Light. But Lithraxian's kind of like lobbying on behalf of Alleria to Zira after she saves both of them, because Lithraxian also kind of gets captured by the Eridar assassin along with Turalyon. And he says, he basically says, courage, honor, and selflessness, these virtues still reside in Alleria's heart, which is kind of what Zira said to all of them about how the light works in the people. It gives them courage and honor and selflessness. And even though Alleria has delved into the void, she's done it for courageous, honorable, and selfless reasons. And Zira's response is, virtues count for nothing if you stray from the path the light has chosen for you. But then there's this one sentence that says, and yet, despite her anger, Zira hesitated. And there's another sentence right after this when Turalyon then says, I beg you, Zira, don't harm her. And it says, Zira's merciless regard examined Alleria's soul, and then gives Alleria like another chance. And then still, when Alleria says, no, I'm not going to renounce the void, still doesn't kill her, but imprisons her. It's interesting. It may not seem like it's important, but it puts a little twist on Zira where she's not evil. Zira, in this sense, is kind of like the Scarlet Crusade. She's so focused on stopping the void that she's become fanatical to the point of not evil, but fanatical to the point of unreasonableness. And anything that doesn't jive with her interpretation of this force is seen as negative and as hostile and as something she has to stop. Which is like literally exactly what the Scarlet Crusade originally was before, they got corrupted and, taken over by Dreadlords and then killed and resurrected and their whole crazy storyline. That's basically what the Scarlet Crusade was. They were just crazy light fanatics who thought nobody was good enough and everyone else didn't have the answers, and they did. And this is exactly what Zira is. Which makes her a lot more interesting rather than just like she's an evil light character, because that didn't make any sense. And I really didn't like that idea. But overall, I think this audio drama was very necessary. I do like the moment where the Eridar assassin's about to die and he's like begging Kil'jaeden to save him. And there's a moment where he realizes Kil'jaeden's watching this happen and he just doesn't give a fuck. Like, it's like stone cold Kil'jaeden, like, didn't give a shit that he was getting murdered. And I like how the very beginning, the demon tries to trick Alleria by posing itself as Turalyon and talking to her in the Twisting Nether at the very beginning, but Alleria tricks him by saying Erator's name as something else. I don't remember, like Matthias or something. And the demon's like, yes, 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 acting as Turalyon, and that's when she knows that he's not true. And then he threatens Erator, and at the very, very end, when the demon's like begging her not to kill him because she's in the Twisting Nether and he'll permanently die, she's like, bitch, you promised to kill my son, so you're dead. And I thought that was pretty cool. I do like how we get to see her personality not changing, but kind of hardening even more, because she's already kind of a hard character, especially earlier on, before all of this, like in the Second War and stuff. She was a really hard character, where she was like, fuck everybody, fuck the Horde, I'll kill them all, I don't give a shit. And she kind of like was a little bit less than that. But then in here, she's like, I could have given you to the Void Lords, and they could have turned you, and I wouldn't have to even worry about this. But I'm going to be giving you... She doesn't say it, but she's like, I'm giving you the better option of just permanently killing you. Because this way, you're not going to go fucking crazy and becoming a slave of the Void Lords. So... And then he's dead. So... Overall, I think this was a very well done audio drama, and it was necessary to... It was very necessary for the characters of Turalyon and Alleria, because they seemed very much one-note, one-dimensional since their reintroduction into the story. And I do like we get to see their quirks, where Turalyon's kind of like a little emotional baby for most of it. And even in Legion, he's kind of like super emotional as well. I mean, during the Illidan cinematic, and then after the moment in Makari when Talgath mentions, hints at the Naru becoming a Void Naru. And he's like, Zira never told me this. And Velen's like, well, she kind of lied to you and didn't tell you everything that you probably should have known. So it was great. I don't know where they're going with these characters. I think Alleria is much more fascinating now with this than Turalyon, and I still stick to my point that I was making on Twitter that they didn't need to make Alleria the Void character. They didn't have to do that. They could have done it with, like, Natalie Celine, who was reintroduced in the Priest campaign in Legion, and she was the first, like, Void. She discovered the Void for the humans, which makes her, like, a very important character, but she's not utilized at all outside of the Priest campaign. So I really felt like they could have used her as a bridge, like maybe this expansion in this patch, we see her move, Natalie Celine, we see her move away from being just a Priest character and her showing up at the Zenithar and being kind of like introduced to all of the classes as like, and probably like a pretty important character, and she could have went forward as the Void, the friendly Void character to the players. Because while Locust Walker is a friendly Void character, he's kind of like a neutral character. But we could have had Natalie Celine as like the friendly character. But if we're going to have to use Alleria, if Blizzard is damned on setting up this Turalyon's the light and Alleria's the darkness, like cliche storyline, I think Alleria is definitely the more interesting character among the two. Turalyon was never like a super favorite character of mine. He has one of the coolest moments in the whole story, I think, when he like basically turns on his light powers in the Second War during the Second War against Orgrim Doomhammer. I couldn't think of Orgrim's name for some reason. When he defeats him, and I think that's one of the coolest moments in like the entire storyline. But the character himself, I think, is a lot like Khadgar to me, as in he's kind of boring because he's kind of one note, and Turalyon here is fleshed out a little bit more, but he's still kind of like that. So I think Alleria is much more interesting. I'm not sure where they're going to go with Turalyon. I don't know really where they could go with Turalyon other than making him, again, like Tyrion 2.0, where he just becomes like a neutral character in the next expansion against the Void, and is kind of just like, I'm leading the neutral faction now, ha-ha! And then that's what he's doing. And Alleria is kind of the much more interesting one. Like I said, she's like the Darian Mograine. She's doing what needs to be done when Tyrion won't do it. So I'm much more looking forward to Alleria. But in general, I think this audio drama did what it was supposed to do, and it was to make people interested in what's going to happen next. I think that's the key point, that it's for underneath all of the character development and underneath all of the hinting at Argus, being the world soul and asking for help. It was to make people intrigued about what's going to happen next, and that happened for me. It's no secret that I have not been the biggest fan of a lot of the storyline of Legion, but now that we're basically past that now, and with the raid, we'll be done with it completely, with Illidan and all what happens there, and we just got the data mine of some of the raid dialogue with Illidan, and I want to make a video on that, because, man, I can't believe Blizzard managed to make me feel sorry for Illidan at the very end, but they did it, damn it. But with all that gone, now we're finally into the much more interesting storyline to me, which is like the Void and the Old Gods, and how is the Infinite Dragonflight going to play into all of this? Because we know that dragons are coming back in some capacity, and what happens at the end of the raid due to the data mines, I don't know what. There's like a million possibilities with what happens at the end of the raid that I don't want to spoil for people who don't want to see it or hear it. I don't know what they're going to do next, and I'm very curious to see at BlizzCon what they end up doing. So essentially, this made me super hyped for BlizzCon, which I will be going to for the first time, and I'm super excited. I'll be going with, I got a press pass. I think this is the first time I've said this on YouTube. Blizzard gave me a press pass, so I'm considered part of the press now, which is pretty cool. So I'll be going to BlizzCon this year. I'm staying with Howie and another friend of ours, and we're going to be hanging out. And I want to do some like vlogs when I'm there on my little camera, on my phone, much like I did with more than I did with my first trip. So just a little bit of a teaser for things to come. So we're at the 30-minute mark, which I think is a good place to stop. So thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to listen to the audio drama, and somehow I left a lot of stuff out, I just really talked about things that I liked. There was a lot of like vision-based stuff that Alleria sees that I didn't touch on because there's like a million possibilities that we could go with that. So go listen to the audio drama. I'll link it in the description, and then come back and listen to my thoughts. I know they are very jumbled. I started out with some notes and then kind of just devolved into tangents that I liked, and I think that's a sign of a good lore thing for me, because whenever I see something that really interests me, my mind goes racing a million miles a minute, and I go from this point to this point to this point to this point, and that's how I know I'm interested again in the story, which is good. So, thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time. Stay awesome, and yeah, farewell.